Welcome to D&E's class in defensive driving. If you're taking this class today, it's because you've become an employee for D&E and this is part of your orientation. And the reason that you are taking this class specifically is that you're going to be entrusted with one of D&E's vehicles, either a regular truck or perhaps one of the cranes or a truck and trailer situation. You're going to be driving D&E's equipment, and we want you to learn to drive defensively. Now then, when we talk about driving defensively, what do we mean? We always hear mention of it, but do we really know what defensive driving means? Do we realize the commitment that we have to make to become a defensive driver? Now, defensive driving means driving so as to prevent accidents in spite of the actions of others or the presence of adverse driving conditions. Simply stated, defensive driving means no surprises. Now let's talk about the commitment that's required to become a defensive driver. To illustrate this commitment, we're going to look at the detailed requirements of the National Safety Council's defensive driving program. The object of defensive driving is to drive without ever having a preventable accident. Defensive driving requires the knowledge and strict observance of all traffic rules and regulations that are applicable to the area in which the vehicle is being operated. Defensive driving requires a constant alertness for the illegal acts and driving errors of other drivers and a willingness to make timely adjustments in your own driving so that these illegal acts and errors will not involve you in an accident. Defensive driving requires a knowledge of all the adjustments required in your driving for the special hazards presented by abnormal, unusual, or changing conditions in the mechanical functioning of your vehicle, or the type of road surface, or weather, or degree of light, or kind of traffic, and also your physical condition and your own state of mind. Defensive driving requires a thorough knowledge of the rules of right-of-way and the willingness to yield the right-of-way to the other driver when it's necessary to avoid an accident. Defensive driving requires an attitude of confidence that you can drive without ever having a preventable accident. Now, there is no doubt that a professional code for defensive drivers is not easy to follow. However, you are a professional, and as professionals, you must show the way for other drivers and do your best to drive defensively. So let's take a brief look at how we can accomplish all that's expected by the code. Basically, you need to follow these 3 steps. The first is to see the hazard. When driving, think about what's going to happen or what might happen as far ahead of encountering a situation as possible. You should never assume that everything will be all right. Not only that, but then you need to understand the defense. And by that, what I mean is specific situations require specific ways of handling. So become familiar with unusual conditions which you may face and learn them well so you can apply them when the need arises. Then also, the third thing is to act in time. Once you've noted a hazard and understand the defense against it, act. Don't take a wait and see attitude. Now, taking these 3 steps and keeping good driving techniques in mind, you'll learn inevitably to give in a little, to tailor your driving behavior to the unexpected actions of other drivers and pedestrians, and to the unpredictable and ever-changing factors of light, weather, road, traffic conditions, to the mechanical condition of your vehicle, and even how you feel. Now, the first thing that we want to talk about before we move on to some of the specific aspects of defensive driving that we need to cover in order to do a thorough job of discussing defensive driving. We want to talk about what happens before you ever get in the vehicle. And the first of those is that you need to go out to the vehicle and do a 360 inspection of it. That is, walk all the way around, make sure the tires are in good shape, make sure there are no obvious issues, that the light lenses are not cracked or broken, that everything is in place as it should be before you actually get in and start the vehicle. Then also, especially because we are driving company trucks, pickup trucks, very often that have cargo in the back or equipment in the back, tools or equipment should be secured while being transported to prevent unsafe movement of materials. Now, during a crash or when making sudden maneuvers, loose objects can slide around and become airborne, injuring the driver, the passengers, perhaps by entering into the compartment or being scattered out on the road, or there's a number of things that can happen. So objects that could become a hazard should be secured or stored outside the passenger compartment, and in the bed of the truck, they should also be secured. Another thing that we need to consider is seatbelt use. Now, seat belts are the single most effective means of reducing deaths and serious injuries in traffic crashes rather. As the most effective safety device in vehicles, they save nearly 12,000 lives and prevent 325,000 serious injuries in the United States each year. So during a crash, anyone not wearing a seatbelt is going to slam into the steering wheel, windshield, another part of the interior, or perhaps even be ejected from the vehicle. So before anything else happens, before we talk about any other part of defensive driving, we need to talk about this even before we leave the parking lot or drive away from the house. So we're going to then talk about some other things. We're going to talk about aggressive driving, about fatigue driving, about distracted driving, and about alcohol and drug impaired driving. And then eventually we're going to go over D&E's specific driving policy. So stay with us. Take this opportunity to take the work, to finish the worksheet that you have that relates to this video, and then move on to the next video.